Finally, it's here. The 2019 NFL season is finally upon us. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Ah, you get the point. It's exciting stuff. Let this mark the rapid-fire marathon session of team-by-team previews for this upcoming 2019 NFL season. And what other team would I start off with, in no small part due to the fact that they're playing Thursday night to kick off the 100th NFL season, than the Bears! The Bears! And while last season ended in disappointment, there was a lot of good to take away from that year. Gone the days of Jay Cutler and that whole experience. Gone the 3 years of misery of John Fox. In comes Matt Nagy with his innovative offense. In comes, right before the season starts, Khalil Motherfucking Mack! I still can't believe Khalil Mack is a Chicago Bear! Khalil Mack is a Chicago Bear! And lo and behold, the Bears go on and do great things. Finish 12-4. Win the NFC North. Get to host a home playoff game. And then double doink. But when you look at last season, it is the first season in a long, long time that I could truly, outwardly express pride in being a Bears fan. It's not anything I ever hide from or am ashamed of by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the hope, the potential, and the possibility. I almost had to pinch myself a little bit because I feel like last season wasn't a fluke. I feel like last season wasn't the peak. Last season was the foundation and the beginning of potentially bigger things to come. And quite frankly, I don't know how to react to that. I'm trying to temper my expectations, stay calm, but I get some of the same vibes that I do with this team as I did with the 2016 Cubs, and we know ultimately how that played out. Now, the Bears obviously had some good fortune last year, as a lot of good teams need to have. You could make the argument that if it wasn't for double doinks and some other things, the Bears had a chance to win all 16 games they were in last season, and that absolutely is true. Part of that was due to the fact that every starter on that team played at least 13 games or more in 2018. So not only did you have a new coach with a new offensive system, an improved array of weapons on the outside with Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel, another year of Tariq Cohen, bringing in Khalil Mack and adding him to that core on defense, Eddie Jackson having an all-pro season, so on and so forth. The greatest gift you can get is health in the National Football League. And the Bears were able to count on most all of their guys to answer the bell week in and week out, which was a fortunate turn of events for a team that in the Fox administration had some trouble keeping guys healthy. Well, they just sucked anyways. But as we know, last season was last season, and the Bears ended up just being one of 31 losers. Double doink. Going into this offseason, you knew that the Bears weren't going to be too aggressive. Now, looking at what the Seahawks ultimately gave up for Jadeveon Clowney, I wish there would have been a will and a way to maybe go after him for the Bears and truly go all in, because Christ, as little as they had to give up to get him, why not? But you're talking about a team in the Bears in general that has a young core nucleus on both sides of the ball. The majority of their guys under contract. They're in their window of opportunity. Their time is now. So you weren't going to see a bunch of big signings in free agency. You were going to see the secondary level signings to add some depth. The Mike Davises, Buster Screens, Cordero Pattersons of the world, and so on and so forth. And then when you look at the draft, because they didn't have the first round pick due to Khalil Motherfucking Mack, and the second round pick they didn't have due to last year's trade in the draft for Anthony Miller, wide receiver, no. I was really impressed with the Bears' ability to still get what looks like to be great bang for the buck out of this draft class, considering they didn't have picks in the first 2 rounds. David Montgomery should be the feature bell cow back early on in 2019. Riley Ridley has upside. He was one of the 2 best route runners in this draft class at the wide receiver position, in my estimation, along with Hunter Renfrow. Duke Shelley in round 6. I wouldn't be surprised at some point in time in his rookie season if he unseats Buster Screen as the primary nickelback. And even Kareth White, the running back from Florida Atlantic. I look at him and I say, long term, here's another guy that could contribute in that backfield. There's a lot of things to look at this team and really, really like their strengths. I look at their backfield depth. David Montgomery. We know the versatility and explosiveness and all-around game that Tariq Cohen brings to the table. You got Trubisky, who can really run the ball too. Mike Davis could give you a little bit of something as a bit of a spell guy, kind of a backup spot player here and there for Montgomery and Cohen. And then, like I said, you've also got Kareth White too, who might be able to, in spot situations, provide you something both as a runner and as a receiver out of the backfield. Their backfield depth and their ability to run the ball should play out really, really well this year. Then you look on the defensive side of the ball, those core defensive starters, and in particular, their core defensive stars. You could put Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller up against just about anybody in the league from a defensive standpoint as kind of your 4 stars, your 4 big-name guys. You can put them up against just about anybody. And then you throw into the mix last year's first-round pick, Roquan Smith, who had the holdout situation that got resolved right before the season started last year. Now he's got a full off-season program behind him, a full training camp behind him. I can expect, and everybody should expect, bigger and better things out of him, and he might step into the equation and become that 5th defensive star. You just look at this Bears defense just in general at all 3 levels. They've got talent, they've got stars, they've got impact players, they've got difference makers, and a lot of teams in the league wish they had that. And offensively, I look at that offensive line and I say, you know what, that offensive line is pretty good. Not the biggest of names on that unit, but this is a team that has done a decent job of building up that offensive line. And when you look at it, for the guys on that offensive line were drafted by the organization at one point in time with Leno at left tackle and Whitehair at guard and Daniels and Kyle Long. The one free agent was Bobby Massey. If they can keep Kyle Long healthy, which is a big if, then you would hope that this Bears offensive line would be able to have the continuity of playing together most of the season, which is a critically important thing. But that offensive line, whereas at moments it struggles a little bit in terms of the power running game, pretty good pass protection unit, pretty good in terms of utilizing athleticism as run blockers. I like their unit. It's solid. It's a good unit to put a young quarterback behind. But for a team that I'm feeling really good about this year, there are quite a number of question marks. Number one, the tight end position. What's going on with Trey Burton? On top of that, what are you going to get out of Adam Shaheen? You spent a second-round pick on him in 2017. Is he finally going to be able to stay healthy? Is he finally going to be able to live up to some of the potential that he has flashed in the past? You have a young quarterback. You like to have tight ends that can be productive and be a bit of a safety valve, a security blanket for him. What are you going to get out of Burton and Shaheen at that position? I look at this team, and I got to say Trubisky, you're going into year 3. Saying he's a bust is incredible over-exaggeration at this point. Saying that for sure he's going to be a future star and so on and so forth is, again, incredible exaggeration. There are moments where you see him, and you're like, wow. And there are moments where you see him, and you're like, oh. And I think this is the year that we're really going to find out one way or another what exactly Mitchell Trubisky is. If you look late in that game against Philadelphia in the wild card round, he had the Bears in position. He gave them a chance to win. Double doink. If you see more out of him, especially in big spots, then you got to feel better about the Bears going into this season. I look at their offense, and I do have the question of who truly is going to be that go-to guy, specifically in the passing game. Is it going to be Allen Robinson? Is it going to be Anthony Miller? Is it going to be Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton, Tariq Cohen? Who's going to be that guy when you have to make that play, when you have to get that first down, when it's 4th and goal at the 5 and you've got to get a touchdown to win the game? Who's that dude that you're going to sit there and can go to? I don't know if the Bears have that guy yet. We may find out they have him some point in time in the season. But you would like to have that guy in the passing game. I'm just not sure at this moment that they truly, truly have him. I also look at this roster. One thing that concerned me a little bit, the Bears went 12-4 last year, yes, but they were incredibly fortunate when it came to the team's health. Are they really going to be able to expect to stay that healthy again for another full season? And if they don't, and they get some bad injuries in some key spots, not even talking about the quarterback position, because a lot of teams, if they lose their starting quarterback, they're screwed. So that doesn't mean the Bears are in any more of a unique position than anybody else. But if you lose a couple of guys, especially out of the secondary, offensive line, the Bears could be in some trouble because their depth, while their core on both sides of the ball is really good, and I would argue as a complete team for starters, offense and defense could be just about as good as anybody in the league. If a couple of guys go down, the depth is worrisome. The depth is not as great as you would ideally like it to be. But beyond all else, none of that really matters if the kicking game is a mess again like it was last year with Cody Parkey. Eddie Pinheiro is the kicker right now. We'll see how long he is the kicker for. But if he's sitting there missing left and missing right and dinking and doinking off of the goalpost, then a lot of this other stuff's not going to matter with the Bears. As much as you talk about all these other things that are nice, it's still funny how it comes down to the special teams and it comes down to the kicking game. And the kicking game is one major contributing factor as to why the Bears ended up going out of the playoffs early. Looking ahead to their schedule, I look at this Bears team and I look at the early portion of the season and I say weeks 1 through 5. You look at this and you say they host Green Bay on Thursday night to kick off the season. Then they got to do 2 straight on the road, including week 2 going to Denver to face their former defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. That's a worry game for me. That's a game that I wouldn't be surprised if they go into Mile High and they really, really struggle. The Monday night game in Washington in week 3. Then they come back home to host Minnesota in week 4. Then they go to Oakland in week 5. I look at that early stretch. And if the Bears want to get the taste out of their mouth from the way the disappointing end to last season happened, you got to come out of the gate strong. Especially for a team that primarily rested all of its key players and starters this past preseason. You'll wonder if they're going to come out of the gate and be a little rusty. They have to beat Green Bay week 1. They have to. And even if they lose to Denver, they got to find a way no worse than going 3-2 in those first 5 games. And they really ideally would like to go at least 4-1. Like if you drop the game to Denver in week 2, but you win those other 4, you're 4-1 through 5 weeks. You don't feel so bad about it. Then you look at week 7 and 9. This is where they got some of the marquee big opponents on the schedule. But good thing for them is New Orleans week 7 is at Soldier Field. The Chargers week 8, Soldier Field. The Eagles week 9, that is in Philly, but you got to imagine the Bears are going to be ready for that one. And then closing out the season, 3 of your last 5 games are all road divisional games, which could be concerning a little bit, especially if the Bears are trying to chase down a first-round bye, home field advantage, or even just trying to win the division or even get a playoff spot. You got to go to Detroit. Then you've got Dallas at home week 14. Again, when I'm talking about most of the big marquee opponents are going to be at Soldier Field outside of the division. Got to go to Green Bay in week 15. You host Mahomes in Kansas City in week 16 and close out the season again at Minnesota. When I look at this Bears team, if they can get out of the gate strong and they can start off 4-1 going into those games against New Orleans and the Chargers and the Eagles, going to start to have some really big expectations for the season for this Bears team. A lot of things can go wrong for sure. They could have injury problems. The kicking game could be awry again. Mitchell Trubisky could not progress much from year 2 to year 3. There are concerns here. And I just don't want to be a total fanboy here and say, it's everything, the Bears are everything, Bears! But the reality is, to me, when you look at this team, on paper, they are clearly the class of the NFC North. And they are one of the premier teams this year going into the season in the NFC, if not the National Football League. If Trubisky can take a little bit of a leap forward and the Bears don't get too badly by the injury bug, I expect this team to dominate this division, go something like 12-4, maybe even 13-3. They're going to win the NFC North, potentially have a first-round bye, if not home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And that's right. Let's see the NFC playoff picture after roll through Soldier Field, where Khalil Mack and the rest of the crew can do what they do best. Run a monster-ass train all over them on the midway. Because Khalil Mack is a Chicago Bear, and the Bears are going to be 2019 NFC North champs. You can book it, baby!